The hook, the winter of 1864, was the coldest anyone could remember. But that wasn't what killed Ruth Cole. It was hope. Hope that came in a small envelope, worn at the edges, stained with something dark, maybe coffee, maybe blood. She held it for 3 hours before opening it, because she already knew. When you live on the Kansas frontier, bad news travels slow, but it always arrives, always. The postman had ridden 40 miles through snow to bring her that letter. He didn't say a word when he handed it over, just took off his hat, stared at the ground. That look told her everything before she even broke the seal. Part 2. The character's Ruth Cole was 32 years old when the war began. She had married Elijah Cole at 19. He was 23. Tall, quiet, a man who spoke more with his hands than his mouth. They built their cabin together in 1852, 12 miles from the nearest town, 20 miles from any neighbor who actually cared. The cabin had one room, a dirt floor at first. Later, Elijah laid wooden planks, one by one, each one cut by hand. He was a farmer, corn, potatoes. A few hogs, Ruth kept chickens, spun wool, made soap from ash and fat. They had 3 children. The first, Mary, was born in 1854. She died the same winter. Fever, the kind that comes fast and burns hot. Ruth buried her behind the cabin. Elijah carved a small cross from oak. The second, Samuel, lived to be 6. A good boy, helped his father split wood, had a laugh that filled the whole valley. Then came the accident. A horse kicked him in the chest, broke 3 ribs. The ribs punctured something inside. Samuel died in Ruth's arms. She remembered the weight of him, how he got lighter and lighter as the blood filled his lungs. The third child was Sarah. Sarah was born in 1860, a fighter from the start. Came out screaming and never stopped. She was 4 years old when the war took her father. Part 3. Daily life before the war life on the frontier was not romantic. It was dirt. It was hunger. It was watching the sky for storms that could flatten your crops in 10 minutes. Every morning, Ruth woke before dawn. She lit the fire, boiled water, ground corn for bread. Elijah would be outside already, checking the livestock, mending fences, praying that the well hadn't gone dry. They ate the same thing most days: corn mush, salt pork if they were lucky, eggs when the hens were laying. There was no doctor nearby. When someone got sick, you either healed or you died. Simple as that. Ruth had seen 3 of her neighbors die from cuts that went bad, a splinter, a rusty nail. That was enough to kill a grown man. She learned early not to cry. Crying wasted salt. Salt was precious, but at night, when Elijah slept beside her, she would sometimes press her face into his shoulder and let the tears come silent. He never woke up, but she knew he knew. Part 4. The war comes. The telegram arrived on a Tuesday. Elijah couldn't read, so Ruth read it to him. Call for volunteers. The Union needs every able man. Report to Fort Riley by the 15th. Elijah stood in the doorway, looked out at his field. The corn was almost ready. I ain't going, he said. Ruth said nothing. 3 days later, 2 men on horses came to the cabin. Military men. They had papers. Every able man. That was the order. Elijah argued, said his family needed him, said his wife couldn't run the farm alone with a child. The men didn't care. They gave him 3 days to say goodbye. Those 3 days were the longest of Ruth's life. Elijah worked from sunrise to past dark. He fixed the roof, reinforced the chicken coop, cut enough wood to last 2 winters. He showed Ruth how to shoot his rifle, how to clean it, how to aim for the chest, not the head. Head moves too much, he said. Chest is steady. She practiced every afternoon, shot at a tin can until her shoulder bruised. On the last night, Elijah held Sarah for 2 hours, just held her. didn't speak. The girl fell asleep in his arms. Then he turned to Ruth. "All right," he said. She nodded. "I'll come back," he said. She wanted to believe him. Part 5. The first letter arrived in November 1861. It was short. Bad handwriting. Elijah had learned to scribble his name, but not much else. Someone else wrote the words for him. "Dear Ruth, I am alive. The camp is cold, but they gave us coats. We march south next week. Tell Sarah I love her. Your husband, Elijah." Ruth read that letter 40 times. She kept it under her pillow. The second letter came in February 1862. "We fought at a place called Fort Donelson. Men died all around me. I shot a boy. He could not have been 16. I am sorry for everything I ever complained about. The corn, the hogs, none of it mattered. I just want to come home." Ruth cried when she read that one, not because she was sad, because she was scared. War changes men. She had heard stories, men who came back empty, eyes that didn't see right, hands that shook. She prayed every night that Elijah would come back whole. The letters kept coming, once a month, sometimes less. Each one was shorter. March 1862. "We are hungry. The food is rotten. Men are deserting. I will not deserting. I will not deserted you." June 1862. "Saw General Grant today. He looks tired. We all look tired." September 1862. "The fighting is bad, real bad. I killed 2 more. I don't remember their faces. I try not to." December 1862. "Tell Sarah I think about her every minute. I carved her a doll from a piece of wood. I will bring it home." Then, nothing. From January 1863 to March 1863, no letters. Ruth wrote to the army. Waited 3 months for a reply. When it came, the letter said, "Private Elijah Cole is listed as missing in action. No further information available." Missing, that word. Missing was worse than dead. Because missing meant maybe. Maybe he was in a prison camp. Maybe he lost his memory. Maybe he was walking home right now. Maybe part 6. The struggle Ruth kept the farm alive by herself. It nearly killed her. She woke at 4 every morning, milked the cow, fed the hogs, chopped wood, planted, weeded, harvested. Sarah helped as much as a 4-year-old could, carried small things, watched the chickens, stayed quiet when her mother was tired, and Ruth was always tired. Some days she forgot to eat. Some days she forgot to sleep. Her hands cracked open from the cold. Her back ached constantly. She lost weight until her ribs showed. The neighbors, what few there were, offered help. But help always came with a price. One man, a widower named Harold Price, came by every week. He brought flour, sometimes bacon, but he also looked at Ruth a certain way. "You need a man," he said, one afternoon. "A woman alone won't last the winter." Ruth thanked him for the flour and closed the door. She would rather freeze than share a bed with Harold Price. The winter of 1863 was brutal. Snow piled higher than the windows. The creek froze solid. Ruth couldn't get to town for 2 months. They ran out of food in January. Ruth killed the last hog, made the meat last 6 weeks by eating only once a day. Sarah cried from hunger some nights. Ruth cried too, but only after Sarah fell asleep. She remembered Eliza's rifle, remembered the tin can. She thought about shooting a deer, but the deer were gone, moved south or dead. She thought about giving up, just walking into the snow and lying down. But then Sarah would wake up, and Sarah would say, "Ma'am," in that small voice, and Ruth would get up and make another fire and find something to boil. Part 7. The realistic twist, March 1864. The snow melted. The road to town opened. Ruth hitched the mule to the wagon and rode 12 miles to the general store. She needed salt, coffee, medicine for Sarah's cough. The storekeeper, Mr. Sarah's cough. The storekeeper, Mr. Sarah's cough. The storekeeper, Mr. Stavers Benson, was a fat man with small eyes. He had always been kind to Ruth, but that day he looked different. "Ruth," he said, "I got something for you." He reached under the counter. A box, wooden, small, army, sent it last week. "I've been waiting for you to come in." Ruth didn't open it right away. She knew. A box that's small. It wasn't supplies. It wasn't a uniform. It was the things a man carried. The things they sent back when there was no body. She opened it in the store. Inside, Elijah's pocket knife, his wedding ring, a folded letter, and a small wooden doll, crudely carved. A little girl with braids. The doll Sarah. Ruth picked up the letter. It wasn't written by Elijah. You balked the letter. It wasn't written by Elijah. It was written by a captain, a man named Jonathan Hayes. She read it standing there, in the store, with Mr. Benson pretending not to watch. "Dear Mrs. Cole, it is my solemn duty to inform you that your husband, Private Elijah Cole, died on January 12th, 1864, at the Battle of something Ruth couldn't pronounce. He was shot while carrying a wounded soldier to safety. Before he died, he asked me to write this letter to you. He said to tell you that he loved you. He said to tell Sarah that her daddy was sorry he couldn't bring the doll himself. He also said to tell you something else. He said, the money is under the third floorboard in the bedroom. I saved it for a rainy day. Tell Ruth to use it to buy a milk cow. Mrs. Cole, your husband died a hero. He saved that man's life, the man he carried. His name is Thomas. He is sitting beside me. As I write T, he is crying. We are all crying. Your husband was a good man. The best. I am sorry. Captain Jonathan Hayes. Ruth read the letter twice. Then she walked outside, sat on the boardwalk, and didn't move for an hour. Mr. Benson brought her water. She didn't drink it. Sarah tugged her sleeve. "Mama, where's Papa?" Ruth looked at her daughter. She had to say it. She had to say the words that would break that little girl's heart. "Your papa." Ruth stopped, started again. "Your papa is with Samuel now. And Mary. They're all together." Sarah didn't understand death. Not really. She was only 7. But she understood that her mama was crying. And that made her cry too. They sat on the boardwalk together, mother and daughter, holding each other. The wooden doll was in Ruth's pocket. She would give it to Sarah that night. Part 8, the emotional peak. Ruth went home. She pried up the third floorboard. There was a small leather pouch, heavy. She poured it out on the table. Coins, gold and silver, more money than she had ever seen in her life. Elijah had been saving for years, every extra penny, every small profit from the hogs or the corn. He had hidden it all away. For a rainy day, she counted it twice, $347. It was enough to buy a cow, enough to fix the roof, enough to survive another winter, maybe 2. But that wasn't what made her fall to her knees. What made her fall was the other thing in the pouch, a small piece of paper, folded tight. She opened it. Elijah's handwriting, his real handwriting, not someone else's. He must have practiced, learned to write just for this. The note said, "Ruth, if you are reading this, I am dead. I am sorry. I wanted to come home so bad, but I want you to come home so bad. But I want you to live. Do not grieve too long. Do not waste your years on a ghost. Find someone good. Let them help you raise Sarah. I will understand. I love you. I loved you the first time I saw you at the harvest dance. You were wearing a blue dress. You stepped on my foot and laughed. I knew then, I knew. Goodbye, my Ruth." Elijah. Ruth held that paper until her hands stopped shaking. Then she held it longer. She thought about Elijah at the harvest dance. 19 years old, tall and clumsy, stepping on her feet instead of the other way around. She thought about their wedding, how he had cried, a grown man crying, because a girl said yes. She thought about the night Sarah was born, how Elijah had held that tiny baby like she was made of glass, how he had whispered, "I will protect you both. I swear it. I will protect you both forever." He had kept that promise. He had died carrying a stranger to safety, because that was who Elijah Cole was, a man who carried things, corn, wood, his family, even a wounded soldier he didn't know. Ruth stood up. She walked to the window. The sun was setting over the field. The corn would need planting soon. She had no husband to help her, but she had money. She had a daughter. She had a grave behind the cabin where 3 children already slept, and she had one more grave to dig. Not today, maybe tomorrow. Today she would make dinner. She would give Sarah the wooden doll. She would read Elijah's letter one more time. And then she would survive, because that was what Elijah had asked her to do. Do not waste your years on a ghost. Part 9, the ending. Ruth Cole lived to be 78 years old. She never remarried, not because she couldn't find someone. Men came. Good men. Men who saw her strength and wanted to share it. But Ruth would look at them and see Elijah, and she would say no. She raised Sarah alone. The farm grew. She bought more land, added a second room to the cabin, put glass windows where there had been only shutters. Sarah became a teacher, married a blacksmith, had 6 children. Every summer she brought them to visit Grandma Ruth, and every summer Ruth would take the children to the small graveyard behind the cabin. 4 graves now: Mary, Samuel, Eliza, and 1 empty plot reserved for her. The children would ask questions. "Grandma, why is there no stone on great-grandpa's grave?" Ruth would touch the wooden cross, weathered now, nearly falling apart. "Because he isn't here," she would say. "He died far away, in a place I will never see. Does that make you sad?" "Yes," Ruth would say, "every day." "Then why don't you cry?" And Ruth would smile, a tired smile, a smile that had seen too much and still chose kindness. "Because he asked me not to waste my years on a ghost, and I am not a woman who breaks promises." The last letter from Elijah Cole stayed under her pillow for 40 years. When Ruth died in 1902, Sarah found it. The paper was yellow, the ink was faded, but the words were still there. "I loved you the first time I saw you at the harvest dance." Sarah buried her mother next to the empty plot. Then she put a stone on Elijah's grave. Even though there was no body, the stone said, "Elijah Cole, times 1830 to 1860, 4 times he carried them," all the deep message. Sometimes the people we lose never come home, but they leave pieces of themselves behind, in a hidden pouch of coins, in a wooden doll carved by clumsy hands, in a letter written by a man who learned to write just to say goodbye. Love doesn't end with death. It changes. It becomes the strength to wake up, to plant the corn, to tell the children stories, and to survive. Not because survival is easy, but because the ones who loved us would want us to live.